ace queen offsuit, going to be raise, 4-bet some frequency. So we're going to stick to the plan of opening 2.5x from UTG.
25.
All right, so Chin bringing out the 25 raise again. This is an interesting spot. We mentioned earlier that we were going to flat strong against Chin's raise, and if someone comes behind us with a 3-bet, we had an opportunity to back 4-bet. I think this is actually a really good candidate to do that. So I'm going to flat here, and then if I get 3-bet, then we can come over the top of the back 4-bet.
This hand's marginal, to say the least. Facing under the gun open, under the gun 1 call, even in a 6-max game. Not really a great excuse to VPIP, but inflicting some sort of pain on my man Christian seems to make the price of admission worthwhile.
Go.
So I'm going to defend this, but what I think what's cool about what Chin is doing is that him making it smaller is making it cheap for everybody to actually continue and possibly make mistakes post-flop, which I'm going to be very mindful of not to do with my particular hand since it's complete garbage, but I'm just going to look to spike something crazy, given that I'm getting incredible odds right now. I'm never folding, so we'll see where this goes. So didn't pick up much here. No need for me to do anything crazy. I do have a blocker to like potential straight, but it's largely not gonna really do anything crazy since this board is gonna heavily hit someone in this multi-way scenario. So see where this goes.
King Queen 8 is heavily going to favor me. It's going to interact rather well with Lukic's range. He's going to have some set of 8s, some King Queen offsuits. The fact that the King and the Queen are suited kind of increases. I mean, it's kind of the same. He's going to have King Queen offsuit. He won't necessarily have too many kings and queens. Obviously, he could have some queens and some kings as traps, which is fine. I think if I choose the small bet size here to leave my range completely uncapped, it causes some problems for Lukic, simply because if he does have top of range, he's going to have 2 players with equity behind him. He's going to feel incentivized to raise top of range, which is a good thing for us because I don't think he'll have enough bluffs facing an uncapped range as myself here. So this is kind of just a range bet spot that also allows me to have pretty intense nut coverage on a turn queen, which is important when you're facing tough players. The fact that I don't have a spade is somewhat of a negative. I'm going to get raised a little bit more frequently by hands like ace 10, ace jack of spades, but that's fine. Maybe even ace 8 of spades. That's fine. My hands, I'm going to have plenty of hands to protect my range there. I'm choosing the small size to protect my range here and pretty much leave my range uncapped, push my equity towards the next street. So pot now is going to be 25 times 4 plus 5, so it's going to be 105. I'm going to choose the $30.
So this is an interesting bet. I imagine Chin isn't going to be betting a lot on this board texture, particularly 4 ways. Unfortunately, this board is just not really good for my specific hand, so I can't, especially with 2 players left to act, I can't continue on this board. So.
I kind of made a joke pre about like trying to crack Chin, but in all reality, this hand is far too wide to be defending. Even though we do want to VPip the majority of our hands from the button, this doesn't really fall into that class. This is just kind of one of those one-off trying to draw blood plays. I like chin betting on this board texture for sure. This falls advantageous to him. I think the sizing's good if he's betting the majority of his King X and some of his equity range. I think he can go slightly larger if he is restricting that c-bet range. You know, to more so the top end of his strength, like ace king plus, maybe only like ace 10, ace jack, or jack 10 of spades. In either regard, I think that this is going to work. I don't know that Fausto is going to have a ton of equity to peel with, but we'll find out.
I can't believe this is getting through on this board texture with this many people, but it is what it is.
I mean, obviously that's a good result as well. Folding out the cumulative equity shares of 3 opponents versus middle pair is always a pretty huge win for us there. So I think a lot of players make a mistake of like checking their hand there a little bit too frequently. So obviously good win for us there.
Before I met Chin, I was playing 2-5 on a stake. I used to play big before I met them, actually. And then went on an enormous downswing, got dropped, had to move down, rebuilt from there. Well, we first did individual coaching, and then I ended up going to Elite right away.
Chris is trying to get a sneak of. He threw it in and he got snap called. He didn't like the feeling of the snap call.
Brian cold 4-bet. I think he loses all of his money trying to be balanced.
Yeah, 127%.
Yeah, because you guess what? You're not balanced.
No.
And you just do a shitty job of exploiting at that point.
Do it. Look at him.
He's nervous.
Yes, call. Yes, he did it. Fuck yes. So proud of
I'm
him.
confident they heard him.
Yes.
But I've seen
I'm so happy.
most of Poker Out Loud, if not all of it. Not in preparation, but I love the format. I think Chin punted pretty hard until about season 3, which is a nice boost of confidence. Well, it does force you to act without knowing the result of the hand. So it sort of corners you into accountability, which is exciting. Standard open for me here. I went 4x earlier, so I'm going to stay consistent.
Board it.
Definitely gonna play this. This is gonna be a standard call from me unless I feel like I need to isolate Chris so I don't start getting squeezed from behind. But other than that, Chris is getting ready, putting his chip on the cards. That's funny. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Go.
Ace Jack of Hearts is going to be mixed into flat and a 3-bet, but in this spot, so I'm going to choose it as a pure 3-bet. Because of stack depths and the fact that each player will have a better price, assuming that Chris folds. So the weird part is that Chris understands my strategy, so if I 3-bet here, he's very likely to 4-bet at a high frequency. At that point, I'm just going to choose my hand as a call candidate. And then just play accordingly. We're going to play like a pretty massive pot at that point, which is fine. So I'm going to choose a pretty large sizing here, represents a pretty polarized 3-bet range here, as well as the fact that I'm at positional disadvantage. So I'm going to choose like a 7x or so. So he opens to 40, something around the vicinity of like 310.
310.
So I expect Chin to be constructing hold here. I would be surprised if he had tier 2 linear, like a 9-10 suited or a Jack 9 suited, those kinds of holdings. He's probably attacking with tier 1, like King Queen suited, Ace Jack suited, that region, and then also the good hands, like Queens plus Ace King. I do have a potential 4-bet candidate. We are like 3K effective. I think I'm gonna go for this one. I would probably rather have a hand that double blocks his top, but you can't have that every time. And gonna go for it, respond with another pull. Probably looking at about a third of our effective stacks.
So this is what I was mentioning earlier. If this situation were to happen a lot throughout the whole session, I would start actually 3-betting my hand instead, or still including it, but now including more of the top. So I could have back races that would include a mix of bluffs and value hands, depending what would be deemed more profitable given the frequencies of my opponents. I would have folded to Chin's raise anyways, given that if I were to call, the SPR is going to be way too shallow, SPR being around 4 or 5, which with my hand is not going to be enough playability SPR wise. But just in a general shift of strategy, I'm going to be looking to try to isolate more if this keeps happening a lot.
So pretty much at the top of our linear range here. The one concern is that Chris looks extremely calm. The other concern is that there's somewhat of a meta, given the fact that he knows that he knows that he should be 4-betting versus small blind 3-bet at high frequency. Even though I chose a polarized sizing, I think he's also opening 4x under the gun, which is strengthening his range somewhat. I don't think I get to fold here too often, unless he missized. I think I get to fold now simply because his sizing is too large and he can't necessarily fold to a shove anymore. I think because of that, I get to just fold. If he sized to like 900, I think I get to call. Pretty big fold. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, there's not much I could do at that point. You calling shove? You calling a shove?
Snap it off.
You have to, right? Because you missized.
You're big blind. Actually, yeah.
You win 3K, 3,200.
Less.
Yeah.
2,800.
Huh?
2,800.
28?
Dude, I counted it 3 times. I was calling. I was calling the 3-bet.
Huh?
I was calling the 3-bet. I had ace jack of hearts. And then I was like, oh, he has it, I guess, because he's calling. Raise. But you didn't.
25.
I think his 4-bet's very good, probably missized a little bit. So at this point, I had the plan of calling 4-bet. However, I thought when I recounted my chips twice, as you see, I counted 2,800 and forgot that there was 280 out there. Either way, I think his size is probably a little bit too large and I probably shouldn't call that size. And I thought that he sized just enough where if I shove, he's kind of priced into call. So because he chose 1100 over say 900, I think his sizing's too large and he's like kind of committed to calling with all of his ace-X combos. If I was to redo that hand, I think that there is a better sizing that I could choose and it would be a larger sizing actually, which is interesting simply because I already chose what would be considered a pretty large sizing. But if I chose a size of say 390 or 400, it really cages the ability for him to even introduce a 4-bet bluff, and he would just kind of be forced to shove. I mean, it's always easier to say afterwards. I mean, at the end of the day, he chose an aggressive play, and it was a good play, and I like the fact that he 4-bet.
Yeah. That was awesome, yeah. That's my favorite hand too. I can't wait to watch that one.
Where you been? 25.
All right, so this is a hand I'm pretty much going to play only a raise or fold strategy, and this falls pretty well into a raise range here too. So I'm going to raise. I'm going to be a little bit more linear here in this spot. I'm not sure if Chin's going to think that I'm pulled or not. But I'm probably going to hedge in terms of sizing and go just a little over 4x, so we'll go to 110.
110.
This is a spot where my hand can go either way. It's obviously never a fold. But what I do like to do here is reopen the action in a spot where my hand becomes somewhat, has the availability to induce / get called by worse. So this hand has the availability to do many things. It can 4-bet call. It could also 4-bet small size and kind of like retake initiative, which is positive for a hand like tens, which is what I'm going to choose to do this time. So I'm not actually going to 4-bet that large. Something like 285 is probably more than enough. He chooses 110, so I'm going to choose a size of like 275.
$275.
All right, so 275 is a small raise here. I think he's going to be fairly merged here in this spot if he's raising 275. Now, I don't think calling is a really good option in this spot here. I'm going to be dominated by a fair portion of hands, and if Chin is going to be making this bet with, I mean, I think he's going to be fairly linear in this spot here, especially with this sizing here. So if he's going to be making this bet with ace-jack suited, ace-10 suited, like that's really, really bad for me to actually make this call. What I could do in this spot here, and this is probably, as I say this out loud, this is probably suicide, but I could put this at the bottom pole and make it, let's see, I'm playing about 29, so I can make this about 975 and fold to a jam in this spot here. If we do that, stacks will be, it'll be about a 1 SPR on the flop, in which case I'll pretty much just be putting it in if I flop equity. So that's what I think I'm going to do here. I don't think Chin's really going to expect a 5-bet here from a hand that I actually have. I think he's going to make the assumption that if I am 5-betting here, I'm going to be fairly nutted. I do have the ace blocker, which is great. So yeah, I'm gonna make it 975.
$9.75.
So I'm actually going to take this hand and just 6 bet through. I think he has, given the fact that I saw ace 9 offsuit, take this hand, take this 3 bet. I also think he has a lot of availability to find an exorbitant amount of available bluffs. It's just a spot where if I'm unlucky and he has jacks plus, then so be it. I'm just going to take this spot. This hand also unblocks a lot of his available 5 bets here, so let's just kind of hope that we didn't get unlucky. All in. You know what that means.
Yeah, I know what it means. It could mean that I'm slow rolling it here, but all right, so we're at the bottom end of the poll, and Chin pretty much can call that out, so I'm gonna muck this. So. Can I buy in for another 1,000?
You want to pick one?
Another 1,000.
You can show whatever you want. That's fine. I mean, I'm it's pretty much at the bottom of the poll, so.
Sucks to be right and still fold.
Trying to bluff Chin is a pretty terrifying experience. So I'm probably just gonna put this into a call and use my suited broadways instead as a 3 bet. Just try to make a flush.
I got very excited for a second. I saw fake aces. I could probably justify squeezing this spot. It would be a little bit out of line, out of construction. I have much better hands to choose to do so with. I think this is a pretty clear flick it in spot in a button small blind scenario, though I do think Chris is probably carrying forward a pretty strong linear range, so I'm not necessarily thrilled when I flop marginal. All right, so this is a texture that's going to intertwine with Chris's range pretty heavily. I actually, 3 ways, wouldn't be shocked to see Lukic check back. I actually kind of hope he starts with a bet though, because it makes my decisions a lot more clear. That said, we definitely have a 2-street bluff catcher against either of these ranges, though runouts are going to be pretty poor for us as far as clarity goes. So we're going to start with a check and basically have to adjust street by street dependent upon the texture.
All right, so ace-high boards generally going to favor my range, but with Berkey in the hand, Berkey's going to have a lot of just ace-X coverage. I don't have a hand. I'm not going to be betting 100% of my range on this board. I don't really have a very good hand to continue with here with king high, so I'm just going to check back and see what develops on the turn.
So part of the reason I acted quickly on the flop is because I know Berkey's been paying a lot of attention to my timing, and when I quickly called those pocket 4s, he attributed that to a very specific range. So I'm hoping that that plays into this hand him thinking that I have a low equity hand. I don't think there's a lot of reason to lead this turn. If I check, Jack X is probably inclined to bet now. His range is also protected as the initial raiser, so I am going to check.
Okay, my hand falls into a clear value bet. At this point, I think I want to be targeting Jack X, but I also still want to allow for hands like King Queen, Queen 10, you know, the natural gut shots, King 10 to continue. They'll sometimes improve to an inferior second pair that they may feel is good. So I actually get to go for 2 streets here at a fair frequency for a smaller kind of low-end catch-all bet size. I'm going to start by betting, there's 120 in the pot. I'm going to start betting about 40% pot. So we're going to go 50 here. And then probably something in the neighborhood of 100 or 125 on the river.
Yeah, so we're pretty low in my range, so pretty clear fold.
No real purpose in raising here. We only get action from very valuable hands. So just gonna call.
All right, so a lot of my bluffs now fill on this river 6 of hearts. Chris will have heart coverage, of course, though I think his worst hearts probably would start betting on the turn. I am beaten by some of, I'm not beaten by much of his ace since we're just chopping a lot of the time. He could have ace queen in range for sure. He could have ace X of hearts, that's a no-brainer. I think I would be remiss to not go for thin value here. It's pretty close. I would want to be betting Queen 10, King 10. And that's probably about it for busted draws. So I'm gonna have some bets there for sure. But since I have so few bluffs, I would be more likely to be polarizing here on the end. It's just really close because I don't really know that he needs to defend with a jack. I think that he'll just have a lot of ace X. I think he'll have a lot of flushes that are auto calls. Yeah, I think that that's a bad enough river card where I can begin to check down.
Where's the money at?